I've just been asked to be kind to Donald. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give him an opportunity to present his case. And as a journalist, I will then misrepresent, misconstruct, and oversimplify it by asking him vague and sort of generalized questions. He, as a lawyer, will take that up and answer it in any way that he wants and construct an answer out of a question that I never asked. Okay?
All right, that works.
Works for you.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Okay, I think one of the things I was asked to speak to, because there are many things that have been spoken about, is about this attempt or this program exercise, if you would say, of the African Union and its member states to try and add jurisdiction to the court that it has, that currently can only deal with human and people's rights issues, to eventually also be able to deal with international criminal legal issues. And I was asked my value judgment on that. And I would say probably it would be a bit biased because the Pan-African Lawyers Union has been involved as a consultant in drafting the treaty, which has now been negotiated by the states to the level of justice ministers. But I think it's actually a pretty good thing. The bare outlines of the court, which I think I mentioned in the morning, are that it's looking at possibly a wider array of crimes than does, for instance, the International Criminal Court, because it's looking at genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, but it's also looking at unconstitutional change of government as an international crime, at least in Africa, and that's provided for by the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance. It's also looking at corruption, money laundering, a new crime of illegal exploitation of natural resources, and also trafficking in humans, in drugs, in hazardous wastes, and also aggression, piracy, and terrorism. So quite a range. It's also the first international court that I know of to consider the prospect of both individual criminal responsibility as well as corporate criminal liability. So it's a pretty ambitious court, but it's a court which, if it takes off, and however long it takes to take off, will really be a game changer. Just like in 1981, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights was a game changer in being the first international instrument to combine 3 generations of human rights in one instrument. So there, I think it's really a positive thing that we need to confront and see to what extent we can make it work.
So how long will it take?
I don't know. It's up to the states. On Tuesday this week, the ministers of justice and the attorneys general of Africa, of the AU, adopted the instrument as amended by them. So there's a strong possibility that it will be before the Executive Council and then the summit, the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the AU in July when it meets in Lilongwe. So it would be adopted then. Then the work of securing ratifications from the member states begins. Under the AU laws, when 15 member states out of the 54 ratify, it takes effect, at least as regards those 15.
And do you have an immediate 15?
Sorry?
Do you have an immediate 15 that were already ratified? Because I was already waning and drooping when I heard you say it's going to be ratified, it's going to go before a commission, it's going to go before a this and a that and a that, which seems to be the way the African Union does business.
Well, I'm not a soothsayer, and I definitely don't want to fall into the club of people Tim Allen spoke of in the morning. And so I don't know how quickly or how slowly the ratifications will come.
And what happens in the meantime?
I mean, in the meantime, first, the Human and People's Rights Court is in place. As the good Vice President said in the morning, in the course of last year, 15 cases were filed there, including, very interestingly, a case filed in March by the African Commission on Human and People's Rights against the then government of Libya, the Gaddafi government, for serious and massive violations of rights of its people, which is still pending before the court. So that court will go on, and if this jurisdiction never comes, the Human and People's Rights jurisdiction will go on. If this jurisdiction comes, it will be additional to what exists.
Mentioning the case against the Libyan government immediately brings me to the issue of funding. Now that the AU's main sugar daddy, Muammar Gaddafi, has died, would this, firstly, where's the money going to come from? And secondly, would this have happened? Would Libya have been brought before this court if Muammar Gaddafi was still alive?
Well, because some hardworking people went and shot him down, we'll never know now, will we?
But we kind of do know, because, I mean, in this, the main criticism that people level against the ICC is that it's subject to manipulation and, you know, selective prosecution. There's nothing that says that this African court is not going to be subject to those very same pressures, probably even more.
Actually, yeah, there's nothing that says that, and I can't promise anything. What I can say is that the African Commission had filed a case against Gaddafi before Resolution 1970. And the court, when it received the case, actually made provisional measures ordering Gaddafi and his crew to stop killing their people. And everybody thought that the government was going to totally ignore this case. The government actually entered a defense in the case and looked like it wanted to defend the case on the merits. How would that have played out? I don't know. But I would like to say that I see an Africa that is changing socially, culturally, economically, politically, and things that were not possible 2 years ago are now possible. And that's the same argument I would use when it comes to the money. That right now there's a debate going on at the level of the AU on alternative financing for the AU by Africans.
You mean China?
Sorry, no, not necessarily China. I think more of the African people, and first in terms of budget advocacy, how they will hold their governments to account nationally, regionally, continentally.
How will you justify that expenditure when people say that they actually have a whole range of other issues and that they don't have much confidence in any case in how this structure will work because they don't see any of the other structures of the AU delivering any particular kind of satisfaction to them?
I think the greatest problem that the AU and a lot of the RECs suffer is a problem of communication.
You don't mean they just have a bad image? No, it's just a matter of how they communicate that image.
No. They have a bad image. I mean, image, that's subjective, isn't it?
And yeah. Also, I mean, with good reason in many instances.
Yes, I grant that completely. I work from time to time with various AU organs and institutions, and I know they're nowhere near perfect. But there's a lot that's also happening that is not getting reported. For instance, when I gave the statistic in the morning, that at least from the level of norm creation, we've seen these institutions sign 15 new treaties from 2002 to date that provide for one element or the other of democracy, good governance, constitutionalism, human rights.
All of the member countries of the
Not all of them have ratified all of them. But if you look at the amount of work that's happened, at least in terms of norm creation, and they have institutions with them in 10 years, I think it gives you some sort of hope that I wouldn't totally write you off. I would try and invest some of my time into seeing whether this will actually work. And my challenge actually now is no longer to the African governments. My challenge is actually to the African people through their organizations is, okay, now your leaders have signed up to this series of ideals. They've created this kind of implementation mechanism, this kind of enforcement mechanism, a court here, a commission there, an advisory board here. How are you going to use this? If only to call their bluff. How are you going to use what exists? And then if it doesn't work, then you can say, well, we tried it and it doesn't work.
Why would it deliver a better quality of justice than what the ICC does?
Why shouldn't it?
Well, why would it?
I mean, for me, I think the point is I have absolutely no problem, and I think that point has to be made. I have no problem with an ICC that works perfectly, and I think we should continue having that.
So why would we add another layer then? Another gravy train, some people might say.
A Ugandan judge a couple of years ago gave, an example that I really liked. He said, the fact that there's a national referral hospital in the capital city does not mean I don't want a provincial medical hospital. The fact that there's a hospital in the province does not mean I don't want a district hospital in my district. The fact that there's a district hospital does not mean I don't want a dispensary around the corner. The fact that there's a dispensary around the corner does not mean I don't want a pharmacy across my door. The fact that there's a pharmacy across my gate does not mean I don't keep some medicine in my cabinet. We're in a continent in which there's a lot of sickness and we need all the medicine we can get.
Okay.
And I would like...
So we're in a continent where there are lots of human rights abuses and we need all the medicine, all the remedies that we can get. Okay.
So I would work for a strong, credible, effective ICC, and at the same time, a strong, credible African court, sub-regional courts, national courts, and other mechanisms. So I think it's just a division of labor.
But don't you think that those who are powerful might then say, well, actually, we're not going to use the ICC at all. We'll just use the African system and the African court, African solutions for African problems, which ghettoizes African justice.
No. If you have an effective, efficient, credible court with well-defined crimes and systems at work. What's wrong with that? As I keep on saying, there's this thing about the ICC maniacs that everything must go to the ICC. You know, and I say that the only place in which you should say forsaking all others is in a monogamous relationship if you believe in one. So I don't see why this has to be a contest between the African court and the ICC. If the African court can deliver justice, why must people go to The Hague? If there are gaps left, yeah, sure, take them to The Hague because we are part of a global community.
So let's get back to the issue of money. Have the Chinese already promised to build a grand building for the judges in fancy dress to hang out in?
Not as far as I know of. The Tanzanian government, the Tanzanian government has given land and has promised to build a court.
What would you take from the ICC and apply to the building of an African system of international justice?
First, that we must look at this justice question broadly. I think one of the speakers said in the morning that we can't just compartmentalize justice and say what's funky now is international criminal justice and not economic justice, and not land justice, and not resource justice. I think that's the biggest lesson that the ICC can teach, and that once you do that, you have a holistic idea of justice that takes care of everything, then the court is likely to work. And I think the double standards and duplicity that we've seen in the international system with regards to who gets referred and who doesn't, who gets prosecuted and who doesn't, and how fast that happens, is something definitely I would not like the African system to take. I mean, if you look at the case of Colonel Gaddafi, and I believe Colonel Gaddafi was not a nice person and ought to have been prosecuted. If you look at the period from Resolution 1973, when Ocampo took the case, and how soon it took him to turn around and get arrest warrants when he had no access to the country, very little he can say in terms of NGOs or whoever helping him. Compare and contrast that with the Kenyan case, where the National Human Rights Commission was helping, the NGOs were helping, there was a working commission, which was a Kofi Annan instituted commission, and it still took him 1.5 years to get, say, now I have enough to go. You know, then you look at that and you say, you know, we needed to get Gaddafi, but we needed to get Gaddafi correctly in an institution in which there's respect, using processes that we have faith in.
Okay, I can't argue anymore. There's a room full of lawyers here. I think you should take up the challenge now. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, you might have good